Donald Trump recently sat down for another interview with Sean Hannity, and probably to nobody's surprise, it was just another example of Sean Hannity trying to suck up to dear leader, and it was Donald Trump talking about a whole bunch of conspiracy theories, going off on wild tangents, and trying to avoid accountability for anything that might negatively impact him. But if you end up getting anything out of this video, please remember to smash that subscribe button. I am a brand new creator trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers, and I would very much appreciate your support. Now, I think the conventional wisdom is that candidates should go out and do media appearances to try to garner more support before an election. But I'm really starting to question whether or not these types of interviews are hurting or helping Donald Trump. Because more times than not, Donald Trump is not even answering questions that are asked. He's going off on these wild tangents that are laced in with a whole bunch of conspiracies. And just overall, he doesn't seem tethered to reality. It's like he lives in a completely different universe and only visits networks that exist within his echo chamber. So let's go ahead and take a look at this interview. We'll kick things off by Donald Trump trying to deny that he had any involvement with Tony Hinchcliffe performing at the Madison Square Garden rally.
I don't even know if you were there for the whole thing. I don't know what time you got there. I was told and made aware that you had no idea about this comedian who made comments.
I have no idea who he is. Somebody said there was a comedian that joked about Puerto Rico or something, and I have no idea who he is. Never saw him, never heard of him, and don't want to hear of him. But I have no idea. They put a comedian in, which everybody does. You throw comedians in. You don't vet them and go crazy. It's nobody's fault. But somebody said some bad things. Now, what they've done is taken somebody that has nothing to do with the party, has nothing to do with us, said something, and they try and make a big deal. But I don't know who it is. I don't even know who put him in. And I can't imagine it's a big deal. I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president, I think, that's ever been president. When the hurricanes came, I rebuilt. I helped them rebuild their electrical system. I helped them rebuild dams and everything else. That place was hit by so many hurricanes. It's almost like Hurricane Alley. I've never seen anything like it. And Puerto Ricans love me because I was the president that stood up for them more than any president.
So this is classic Donald Trump, isn't it? Deny, 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 and then shower yourself with praise about a topic that might or might not be related to the question. And Donald Trump honestly just lives in this fantasy world that he has constructed for himself. Trump and his administration literally blocked aid and held up aid to Puerto Rico after they were ravaged by hurricanes. And then when he did go down there, he was throwing paper towels into the crowd like they were a t-shirt cannon at a concert. And then to say that he had no involvement with the people who spoke at Madison Square Garden is just ludicrous. We already know that the Trump campaign was vetting every single speaker that spoke there, and we also know that they even vetted the jokes that Tony Hinchcliffe was going to say. So Donald Trump is clearly lying to you. He is hoping that his supporters won't go and look this stuff up. Even if they did, they probably wouldn't care. But either way, Trump is living in a fantasy world, and he is trying to avoid any accountability, just like he always does. Let's go ahead and move on to Donald Trump trying to claim that it is the Harris campaign that is running on hate and division.
We're now, with the final week of this campaign, we have two very, very different closing arguments that have emerged. Kamala's closing argument, her surrogates, Nazi, fascist, racist, Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, and I thought this was supposed to be the campaign of joy. It doesn't seem very joyful to me. What's your reaction when you hear that?
They have no joy. They took it away from a man. I'm not a fan of Biden, obviously, but he got 14 million votes. She got no votes. She was the last in 22 people ran. She was last. She came in last, never made it to Iowa. They went in and they said, you're not running anymore. We're taking it away. They took it away, and he gave up much more easily than I would have thought he would have. But this is not a campaign of joy for them. It's a campaign of hatred.
Every accusation is a confession with these people. We see it time and time and time again. Donald Trump is actually the candidate who is running on fear and division and hate. That is why we saw the rally that we saw at Madison Square Garden. It was filled with hatred and vitriol and degradation of other people. They were just pointing at different minority groups and showing their dislike towards that group. And it was the exact same rally that Donald Trump wanted you to see. I keep on saying it. While the Trump campaign tries to distance themselves from that rhetoric, Donald Trump knew what was going to be there, and it's exactly what he wanted you to see. He is banking on the fact that he will turn out more voters that hate other people than actually trying to expand his coalition to reach out to moderates or Republicans. But that's for a different video. Let's go ahead and move on to this very strange anecdote about Trump's father telling him that he can't use or shouldn't use the words Hitler or Nazi. This is really strange stuff.
You know, my father, and I mentioned this for the first time yesterday, I was in Pennsylvania, and I mentioned it. I said, my father, when I was young, never mentioned the name Hitler, ever. He was tough on it. Somebody would say Hitler, never mention that name. Nazi, never mention that name. And he meant it too. And it was a word that you never use. You know, you never use those words.
It's the embodiment of evil.
They accuse me of being a Nazi. They accuse me of being a Hitler-type guy or a Hitler lover. And I'm not. I'm the opposite. They're the ones that are doing. They're oppressive. This is like an oppressive machine.
What is Donald Trump talking about? In what context does the conversation that he just described make any sense? Yeah, my dad, he was telling me that you can't say the word Hitler. You can't say Nazi. And he was serious, too. What is he talking about? What parent sits their kid down and is like, you can't use the word Nazi or the word Hitler, and I'm very serious about it? It just doesn't even make sense. The only thing that does make sense is Donald Trump is trying to distance himself from the Hitler associations. And we're not coming out and calling Trump Hitler. We're not saying he is the next Hitler. It was his own generals who came out and said that Trump fits the definition of a fascist, and that he praised people like Hitler and the way that he controlled the generals. He also said that Donald Trump would rule like a dictator if he were able to. These are all true statements that came from the people that worked most closely with Donald Trump, and that is why those comparisons are being made. It's not just the Democrats coming out and trying to slander Trump's good name with these types of comparisons. That's just not what's happening. So Donald Trump can continue lying. He can continue to spin these very strange anecdotes about how his father didn't want him to use those words. But we will continue to look at the evidence that we have. We will continue to look at Donald Trump's authoritarian tendencies, and we will continue to call them out. Let's go ahead and move on. I don't understand why the MAGA movement is so obsessed with transgender people. Again, we have Trump here and Sean Hannity trying to say that the schools are transing the kids without parental consent.
But nobody ever came to me and said, it's really important that we do this. Men should play in women's sports. I think it's got a constituency of about almost nothing.
I think it is very interesting that he just said that. It has a constituency of about nothing. So Donald Trump clearly understands that this is a very, very niche issue, but the MAGA movement continues to chew on it like red meat. They continue to obsess about trans people and people's genitals. And then they continue to tell this conspiracy that the schools are coming after your kids.
And yet they do it. Maybe it's because they want to destroy the country. I don't know.
Or gender-affirming care for minors.
Sure.
Care without parental consent.
So a young man leaves for school and goes to school, and the authority takes him over without parental consent, and they do things to him that you don't want to know about? I mean, is this supposed to be America? I don't think so.
That doesn't sound
These
like...
people are radical people. And let me tell you, she's not a smart person. She's a low IQ individual. I've said it for a long time. She speaks so slowly. Everything's so slow. She thinks of answers. They ask her a question. She talks about she was grown up with a lawn growing on her front yard. Everything is like crazy. 60 Minutes protects her. 60 Minutes takes out her answer and puts a new answer in because her answer was so bad. Could you imagine them doing, I'd love to have them do it for me. Think of it, Sean, 60 Minutes, CBS, they should lose their license. This isn't just editing. They took out her whole answer, every word, and they put a totally different answer in so that she looked better, because she looked like a very stupid person if they would have left the original answer. I've never even heard of a thing like that.
You mentioned your...
So how did we get from the schools are transing the kids without parental consent all the way over to 60 Minutes should lose their license because they were covering for Kamala Harris? This is what we mean by Donald Trump and his rambling nonsense. He goes from topic to topic to topic. He calls it the weave, but he just looks like a lunatic. Why are these people so obsessed with the trans community? He has clearly identified that this affects a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of our population, but they continue to demonize, to go after the trans community. And when he is pressed on if he can provide an example of an actual school providing gender-affirming care without consent, they got nothing. This is just another way for Donald Trump to continue to scare his base in hopes that they vote for him in November. It is quite pathetic, and I am sick and tired of people who want to be the president of the United States going after marginal communities. I've had enough. And the last video I will show you is this very strange story about Iranian hit squads and Kamala Harris.
This is the environment we're in. I am told, you can confirm if you want or not, Iranian hit squads are in this country that want to assassinate you. And you have an entire establishment in the Democratic Party. Kamala's not telling them no.
Kamala Harris does not have any control over Iran or Iranian hit squads. The only reason that they are putting these two things together in a sentence is for Fox viewers to believe that Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party are somehow involved or are somehow condoning the assassination of Donald Trump. And that is a load of crap. Democrats have time after time after time condemned political violence and said it is unacceptable in the United States. So Sean Hannity should be ashamed of himself for bringing these two things up in the same sentence and trying to make some correlation here that just clearly does not exist.
She herself is using some of these words. Tim Walz is using these Nazi analogies. And in light of the environment and what has happened and assassination squads being here, I mean, what is your reaction to the fact that they won't stand up morally and say, stop with the Nazi fascist garbage and let's argue on the issues of the day and whoever wins, wins?
They only go after consequential presidents. I'm very consequential. I make China pay. I had Iran ready to make a deal. They would have done anything now. They have $350 billion. They were broke with.
There he goes again. Donald Trump in his word association games. Oh, this must be connected to that, and that's connected to this. And these people are insane. They're trying to blame the assassination attempts or any future assassination attempt on Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party. This is priming the Fox News audience and MAGA supporters to be a little bit more okay with political violence. If you think somebody is making plans to execute one of your family members or is condoning that type of behavior from a certain group of people, how are you supposed to react? And that is the exact way they want you to think about it. Kamala Harris and the Democrats have all condemned political violence. They have all said that it has no place in the United States, even for somebody like Donald Trump. And they have said it over and over and over again. So Sean Hannity, the pathetic excuse for a journalist, should be ashamed of himself. Donald Trump should also be ashamed of himself because he knows that his supporters will take it upon themselves to do irrational things when they start believing things like this. Look at what happened on January 6th. So, yet again, Donald Trump sat down for an interview. He went on wild tangents. He concocted crazy conspiracies. And so again, I will ask, are these interviews helping Donald Trump? Or are they hurting Donald Trump? Because I tend to think that it might be the latter. So, I'll leave it there. If you guys got anything out of this video, please remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. Like I said, I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I would very much appreciate your support. If you want to see the absolutely insane rhetoric that we saw at the Madison Square Garden rally, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.